And we are back to talk about a couple of things in the news. One old news story that I kind of wanted to get to. So I was kind of not around for all of January, and this kind of hit in January. It's about the Jon Snow show, the one we're all excited about. Before we started recording, Preston was like, well, it's kind of probably most likely not going to go ahead, which I had hope, Preston. I have hope. I have hope for wins. I have hope for Dream. Even though it's just a dream, I have hope.
And you have hope for Snow.
I want to give you like my mental gymnastics on this, and I fully admit this being optimistic with it. So, first and foremost, about the Snow Show. So apparently Kit Harington was at the Winter Comic-Con, and during his panel, he said how, he pitched it, but it looks like it's not going to go through. Yep, that's basically it. Someone who was there, even though there's no footage of him saying this, which I find weird, someone who was there and they've posted proof that they were there, just regurgitated the information back on social media. So there it is. And I'm more inclined to believe it because it's such a random little thing to lie about. But okay, I'll tell you why I want the Snow Show for two reasons. The first is, when do you ever get a continuation of the story after the fact in fantasy? It almost never happens.
You're not counting Frasier and Cheers.
Frasier and Cheers are fantasy?
No, in the fantasy genre. Let me think about it.
Because Lord of the Rings, Tolkien briefly went into the New Shadow, and then it was just like some ideas he had, but
I mean, you're right that like we tend to get things like they produce Battlestar Galactica, and then they do a Battlestar Galactica prequel. They did Star Wars. They did the Star Wars prequels, and then they eventually got around to the sequels with Disney.
I'm talking about sequels specifically when it comes to fantasy. It almost never happens.
Yeah, I'm trying to think some others where, I mean, they do like to go back and do prequel stuff. Which is weird. The prequel trends. I mean, you kind of sci-fi too. I mean, Matrix. We got a Matrix 4. That was weird. That was weird.
I consider that more sci-fi than anything, but sequels to the stories after the fact kind of suck. It's but
no, I mean, you're right. I'm trying to think. Great fantasy shows.
Like Wheel of Time, I don't think has a sequel series.
No.
Witcher, I don't think has a sequel series at all, unless you're counting the video game lore. Then again, we don't know what Project CD Red is doing with the Witcher property going forward after Witcher 3.
Yeah, you're right. Even Dark Crystal did a prequel. Dark Materials did like prequels, though he's leaving it open for possibly doing a sequel like one day.
Sequels only seem to be in the realm of sci-fi. In fact, I don't know if you know this, but I watched the Kings and Generals video about him wrapping up all the end times for Warhammer Fantasy, and spoiler alert, the world is destroyed at the very end, and we don't know what's happening with anything fantasy going forward. It's gone. It's dead. The world was
Warhammer 40K. You're saying? Like
no, fantasy.
Oh, okay. I thought you said Warhammer.
No, well, there's two. There's 40K, which is the space sci-fi stuff, and then there's fantasy, it's like knights and dragons and stuff. And fantasy, for the most part, is gone and dead. The Chaos Gods are laughing, and yeah, there's like, they tried to stop the end times, they couldn't. End times have come. It's barren wasteland, the entire planet. So, like, yeah, for the most part, like, sequels usually are only in the realm of like sci-fi. Very rarely do you see it in fantasy. So that's my first reason. I want a sequel to Game of Thrones. How does, AI Bran rule over Westeros? The second reason, and this is copium, I'll fully admit that to the audience and to you, is the Star Wars prequels are enjoying some kind of like renewed love. And I feel as though a good chunk of that renewed love is not only the sequel trilogy sucking, but also because of the stuff that was released around the prequels. The prequels, for the most part, are just like whatever. But, you have all these books and comics and video games and the Clone Wars stuff. I feel as though that
world building stuff, yeah.
Yeah, George Lucas tried world building, it's kind of boring. But then, like, the stuff around it complements the overall. This is gonna be so. It's gonna sound so lame, but I hate Papa John's pizza. But you know what really makes it like actually fairly decent is
The
that
little
like
sauce.
the garlic sauce you get with it and the fucking pepperoncini, like it's fucking delicious.
Yeah,
Delicious. Like by itself the pizza sucks, but with like that extra stuff on the side, it's actually not that bad. So I'm thinking Snow can't redeem season 8, but it could make it more bearable.
Okay, so this is what I think is kind of interesting. So there's this weird thing about like why sequels usually suck. Almost never is a sequel better than the original. You know, there's a few exceptions that people bring up, like The Road Warrior, some people like Godfather 2, stuff like this. But for the most part, some people like Spider-Man 2, but for the most part, sequels are horrible. And the reason for why sequels are horrible is that when you have a story, when you originally write a story, you have a beginning and you kind of have a 3-act play and you try to figure out a fitting ending to that story. And then it comes together and you have a nice movie. And then the problem is that a sequel undoes that fitting, nice ending that you had planned, continues on the story, and then you need another fitting ending to that story again, even though you've already like undone the first one. And usually the first one is the perfect ending. It's already a good ending. And so to undo that ending and then redo it is a tough thing. And then when you do trilogy, it's even harder because now you're talking about like doing it in a 3-act structure and undoing the endings of the previous 2 and somehow having an ending that fits well for the whole thing. Now, I think you're looking forward to Snow because Game of Thrones had a horrible ending. And so you're not undoing anything. You know, this isn't the nice touching farewell of the Last Crusade where they're running off into the sunset and then undoing it and having Crystal Skull and the time travel one. You know, this is a Dial of Destiny. You know, you're undoing crap and then hoping that there'll be a better ending, which is probably not very hard. So I think that's why you're more open to it than, say, a sequel to, you know, something where you really enjoyed the ending.
Also to make it bearable. Just to make it bearable, just to like, you know, because season 8, what I hate about rewatching Game of Thrones now, because the first several seasons are fucking phenomenal, but what really leaves that bitter taste in your fucking mouth is that you know it ends with Bran being fucking king, which sucks. So it makes it bearable that we could have something, a spinoff that's not a prequel, that moves the story forward in some way to see what's going on, and it could be so good that like, okay, you know what, looking back, season 8 ain't that bad if this was what comes after. It's copium, I know.
Yes.
But
I mean, I think there could be some interesting things to a Snow story. Like I say, like, you know, having him visited by visions of I'm coming up with my own show, but like having him visited by visions of Ygritte or something haunting him, seeing different wildling clans, you know, learning more about the others, maybe traveling the world, going to a shy, whatever you want to do with it. There's a lot to do. It's a huge world. And there's possibilities for that. But, you know, the Game of Thrones still left a dragon out there, you know, flying around the world. There's a lot of unknown. So yeah, you could definitely do it. It wasn't closed up in a very good package, or even that neat of a package. So,
and two quick things. Number one, let's probably let this be the last time we talk about Snow, because at this point it's like, you know, it's over and done.
I mean, it's weird. It's weird how. First of all, I think it's really weird that news came out recently where people are like, they're considering an Aegon's Landing like show, and I'm like, it's all these things we've learned about this forever. They have a bunch of shows that they're thinking about developing, but nothing's going forward except for Dunk and Egg. You know, like that's the only one. Let's simmer down now, you know, and don't get so excited.
I think it would
And
help if we had actual like concrete wording on what's happening with these ideas. Is something being considered or being written or being tested or an active development or currently ongoing like House of the Dragon? Because an active development is Dunk and Egg. So
yeah,
is Aegon's Landing, is that being considered?
no,
Written,
there
tested?
was just clickbait. Like if
Was it just
something,
clickbait? I thought it was a thing.
no, 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 clickbait. Unless
Okay,
you hear
well,
George talk about it, you know, um, or like a major outlet like actually says it's like in development, like they're doing a pilot. It's nothing. It's nothing.
well, to
You
be
know.
fair, I think it was Entertainment Weekly, which is kind of somewhat of a major outlet
Yeah,
that did talk
but
about it.
but it's just people thinking about things is not a story. People considering something is not a story. Everybody considers stuff.
Hmm.
You know.
The second thing I wanted to like put in here before we wrap, but we just go to the next story is props to HBO for being very picky with with their ideas, their spin-off ideas. Because remember, Blood Moon, $30 million pilot, straight in the trash.
Hmm.
And House of the Dragon, good move on their part. Tales of Dunk and Egg, you've been telling this for a long time. I recently went through the material. Great stories. Good idea to do this prequel. Phenomenal idea. Let's get it done. They're being very picky with this, and they understand it's their cash cow, so they want to milk it very delicately, and yeah, it shows. So props to them for not doing what Marvel does, which is just throw any crap at the wall and see what sticks.